know if I'm going to go so far as to say we're seeing the end of the Chiefs dynasty. If you look what the Patriots did with Tom Brady, they won three right off the bat. Boom, boom, boom. 2004. Then they have 8 seasons when they don't win a Super Bowl before winning it again in 2014. That could be what the Chiefs are going through right now. Their offense doesn't look good. I think it's going to look good when they get Xavier Worthy back. I think it's going to look even better when they get Rashee Rice back. But they definitely have offensive problems that make you concerned about this season, about their chances of competing for a championship.
Welcome to the Sportsnaut interview. The NFL is now in full swing as we gear up for week number 3. And joining us today as our guest is Sherine Williams, longtime NFL reporter for NBC Pro Football Talk. And Sherine, we thank you so much for making a few minutes with us here today. Let's get right to it. I want to first start our conversation off talking about the Kansas City Chiefs, who are 0-2, the first time that they're starting now 0-2 since 2014. And, there's still plenty of time for them to get things turned around. But we also know about the data that is out there that tells us the odds of 0-2 teams making the playoffs. So, my question for you is, are you concerned that what we're seeing from the Chiefs here is a little bit more than just a Super Bowl hangover, and that there's some bigger question marks on this team, and we could be seeing the beginning of the end of the Chiefs dynasty?
I don't know if I'm going to go so far as to say we're seeing the end of the Chiefs dynasty. If you look what the Patriots did with Tom Brady, they won three right off the bat. Boom, boom, boom. 2004. Then they have 8 seasons when they don't win a Super Bowl before winning it again in 2014. That could be what the Chiefs are going through right now. Their offense doesn't look good. I think it's going to look good when they get Xavier Worthy back. I think it's going to look even better when they get Rashee Rice back. But they definitely have offensive problems that make you concerned about this season, about their chances of competing for a championship. I think anytime you have Patrick Mahomes, as anytime you had Tom Brady, you have a chance, but they've got to get some of these offensive woes worked out to have a realistic chance of not only winning a Super Bowl, but of winning the division. I think that's probably their biggest goal right now is just to get back and win that division like they have with Patrick Mahomes at quarterback. And it's going to be tougher. The division is much better. The Chargers look really good so far. So we got a long way to go. But I do think there are some concerns about the Chiefs and what we've seen so far.
And yeah, I mentioned some of the data that is out there. Since the NFL expanded their playoffs to 14 teams back in 2020, there have been 43 teams that have started the season 0-2, and only 5 of those teams have made the playoffs. So the odds are certainly stacked against the Chiefs right now. And I think what's interesting about when you look at the way the Chiefs have lost these first 2 games, they lost them both by one score. And previous to that, they have won 17 consecutive one score game. So we're starting to see the pendulum maybe swing back in the other direction, maybe not getting some of the breaks, the ball just not bouncing their way like we have seen from the Chiefs in past years. But if you had to place a bet right now on the Chiefs, do you think that they can dig themselves out of this 0-2 hole and fight back and earn a spot in the playoffs this year?
Yeah, I'm not going to bet against them making the playoffs. I do think they make the playoffs. I think the bigger question is, do they win the division like they always have with Patrick Mahomes? And I think that's a way bigger question. And I'd probably lean toward no right now, the way the Chargers have started out and what I anticipate the Chargers doing this season. It's just such a better division than we've seen in a long time. I think the Broncos are better. I think the Raiders are better. And so I don't like their chances probably to win the division, but I do like their chances to make the postseason. I don't think there's any question about that. I'm not betting against the Chiefs to make the playoffs. And you look at the AFC East. I think we have one team that's probably going to make the playoffs there. So that's some wild cards. And then you look at the AFC North. I Chiefs are probably better than most of those teams in the division. Probably not the Ravens, but the other three teams they're probably better than. And so that's those two teams in the Steelers And now the Bengals without Joe Burrow is who they're competing with if it's comes down to the wild card spot. And then you look at the AFC South, it's not very good. So you start looking at who's going to be the wild card teams. Yeah, I think they're definitely going to be a wild card team. I don't have any doubt about that if Patrick Mahomes stays healthy.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm not betting against Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid at all either. So I agree with you on that one. Now, I want to talk about a couple of other teams that are off to some really good starts. That I'm hearing a lot about. When I'm talking amongst friends and reading online. I want to first start with the Green Bay Packers. Now, I mentioned I've talked with some friends about the Packers, and the vibe that I'm getting is that not everyone is buying this 2-0 start yet. Do you think that the Packers are being a little bit overrated right now, or are they legit big time team?
Well, I picked the Packers to go to the Super Bowl,
Oh,
and I think they're going to go to the Super Bowl. I think
yeah,
they're the best team in the NFC. I think it's going to come down to the Eagles and Packers, who I had in the NFC Championship game before the season started, and I've seen nothing that says that's not going to be the case. I just thought they made their statement in the first week when they beat the Lions, and I like the team that they've built around Jordan Love. I don't think he played up to his capabilities last season, his potential. I think he had room for growth, and I've seen some growth already early in this season. I think he has gotten better. I think he's only going to get better when he gets Christian Watson back, and when Jaden Reed, if he comes back late in the season, however that works out. But he gets some of these receivers back. I think they're going to be even better as they go forward. And of course, the defense has been helped by the addition of Micah Parsons. I think we all see that. So I love the Packers. I think they're the best team in the NFC right now. They're playing much better than the Eagles are. Again, a long way to go. A lot of injuries are going to happen. A lot of things are going to occur. What we see today may not, but what we see in week 16, 17, 18. We certainly weren't talking about the Eagles at this point last year as the favorite to win the Super Bowl. And so there may be somebody who just gets better and better and better as the season goes on. And we're talking about them in week 18 as potentially the favorite. But right now, as I see it, I just think the Packers are the best team on paper, and I think they've shown that the first two games.
yeah, absolutely. Two big wins over two of the NFC's top contenders, the Lions and the Commanders. So I'm with you on that one as well. The other team that is really trending right now is the Indianapolis Colts and Daniel Jones. Now, we saw Daniel Jones looking like, mostly a first round bust with the Giants. He comes over to Indianapolis and he looks like Johnny Unitas. So, you know, is this something that you think is sustainable, the way the Colts are playing and the way Daniel Jones is playing?
I don't know, but I would say they've been the surprise team of the first 2 weeks. There's no question about that. They've played really well and they've beaten a couple good teams. I mean, a lot of people had the Broncos winning that division. And they probably aren't going to win that division. I think Bo Nix is not quite as good as everybody thought he was going to be in taking that next step. So, I don't think they win the AFC West. But their defense is still good, and I like what the Colts did against their defense. I just thought the Colts were the better team in that, and almost worked out where they didn't win. But if you watch the whole entire game, I think they were the better team, and I think they are the better team. And maybe Daniel Jones just needed a new start with somebody else, a
Yeah.
new voice in his ear, somebody who had confidence in him. And he's gotten that in Indianapolis, and he's played like the first round pick that the Giants made him. So, maybe that's all it was. Maybe he's one of those guys that we saw it last year, obviously, in Minnesota, and we've seen it other places when a quarterback gets a second chance somewhere else and takes advantage of it and looks like the first round pick that the team made him. But I mean, these guys are first round picks for a reason. They do have talent, and sometimes it just doesn't match up with the right team and the right coach and the right offensive system. And maybe now Daniel Jones has gotten that, but I just think he's been a great player so far in these first 2 weeks, and I think this offense fits him. I think he's got weapons around him. He's got a running game, he's got an offensive line, and he's got a defense. And I never saw it coming. I thought the Colts had no chance to win that division. I thought it would be the Texans again to win that division, but 2 weeks in, I think you're saying the Colts are the favorite to win that division, and they could end up with the division they play in, if the Texans keep playing like they've played the first 2 weeks, the Colts have a chance really to get home field at least in the first couple of games just because of the division they play in. I mean, that's 6 games. If they can win those 6 games against their division opponents, that's 6 wins that they're gonna have, and I do think they're better than the other 3 teams in the division.
Definitely a winnable division there in the AFC South. And you mentioned quarterbacks just sometimes needing a change of scenery. You mentioned Sam Darnold in Minnesota last year. I think Baker Mayfield would fit that mold as
Same,
well as a
absolutely.
former number one overall pick who's really rejuvenated his career with the Bucks. Now we just talked about the Packers and the Colts as 2-0 teams. They're league wide. There's 10 teams right now that have started 2-0, and I think I may know where you're going with this next answer because you've mentioned the Chargers, but of these 3 teams, I'm going to list 3 teams here. You tell me which one that you have been most impressed with. Is it the 2-0 Chargers, the 2-0 Bucks, or the 2-0 Rams?
Yeah, probably the Chargers. I yeah, probably the Chargers. All 3 of them have been pretty impressive. The Bucks have surprised me a little bit as well with the way they've played. I think we expected the Rams to probably be the best team in that division again, and if Stafford, I mean, the big question was whether Stafford was going to stay healthy. And I think it's still a question. He's going to make
Mhm.
it through 18 weeks healthy. And if he does, the Rams have an opportunity to go back to a Super Bowl. But the Bucks have been something of a surprise. They've had so many injuries here these first 2 weeks. I don't know how Baker Mayfield's going to do with this makeshift offensive line that he's going to have to work behind for the next few weeks until they get some of these offensive linemen back. But the Chargers, I think that's the team to me that's been probably the most impressive. And I didn't see it coming. I mean, Justin Herbert to me had a lot to prove. You know, entering the year that he's entering in, he's been in the NFL long enough, one Pro Bowl, no All Pros, no MVP votes, no playoff wins, one playoff appearance. And we all know how that went way up and they couldn't hold the lead.
Yeah.
So I just thought going into this year, in the second year with Jim Harbaugh, second year in this offense, that he had a ton to prove. And so far, he's proved it. And I've gone back and forth with the guy on Twitter privately of, because he's a huge Justin Herbert fan. And I said, I see the potential. I know why you have him among the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL. I get that. I don't because I haven't seen the production.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're seeing the production now these first 2 weeks. This is what we expected out of Justin Herbert. It just took a little. Again, I think we're talking about a player getting in the right system, in the right offense with the right head coach. And I think that's the case for Justin Herbert now. And I think that was a big part of the problems he had to start his career is just too many changes at head coach, too many changes in
Yeah.
offensive system, too many changes in a play caller, not enough talent around him. I think he has all that now. And I think he's starting to show why everyone lists him in the top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL, if not the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL.
Yeah, certainly playing like a top 5 quarterback so far in this young season, and it looks like they're taking the reins off him a little bit. I think last year they
True.
were more relying on the run game, and this year they seem to be riding his back a little bit more. So we'll see if that continues. Now I know we're only week 3 of the NFL season, but there's already been some chatter out there about coaches on the hot seat. It sounds like nobody's seat is hotter than Mike McDaniel's down in Miami there. Tough matchup this week, going on the road on a short week to play Buffalo. Should Miami go up there and get embarrassed, is it possible that Mike McDaniels does not see week 4 with the Dolphins?
I think it's possible. Absolutely. They were favoring their first 2 games and they went out and laid eggs. So that told you what people thought about the Colts too in week 1, and they just destroyed the Dolphins. So yeah, I think Mike McDaniel is in trouble. I think he could be gone at some point sooner than later. I think they'll be looking for a new head coach after this season. I don't know who will be the interim coach the rest of the season. I think they have a quarterback problem they're going to have to address. Maybe Quinn Ewers even sees some time this year. I don't know. But they've got a lot of things to address. And we're talking about going back to the Chiefs. We're talking about you know they don't they've kind of made do at that wide receiver position. They keep drafting people, Sky Moore, all the guys they
Yeah.
Xavier Worthy, all the guys they drafted, Rasheed Rice, and they haven't always worked out. well, you know what? They haven't had that receiving corps since Tyreek Hill left, and they've still won Super Bowls. But I think there's a possibility the Dolphins trade. I think there's a
Mhm.
really good possibility the Dolphins trade Tyreek Hill. Uh, Late October, maybe sooner than that if they feel like they're out of it, and they probably will be. And look for the Chiefs to maybe make a move to get Tyreek Hill back on their roster. I think that'd be a good move for the Chiefs. And I think we'd look at the Chiefs a little bit differently if they had a true number one
Yeah.
receiver. Can you imagine Tyreek Hill, Xavier Worthy, and Rasheed Rice on the same offense? I think that would be a formidable group of
Yeah.
receivers, and it would really give Patrick Mahomes something that he hasn't had since Tyreek Hill left. So something like that could happen. Maybe it's a different team. Maybe it's not the Chiefs, but I do think that's a move you probably see the Dolphins make to look toward the future, to start building toward the future. That's what they need to do. They need to build toward the future. It's obviously not going to happen this year. I know we're only 2 weeks in, but you gave the stat about 0-2 teams, and they've
Yeah.
looked really bad against two really bad teams. So I don't see this team turning that around at this point.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you on that. I'm sure there's a lot of teams around the league that do not want to see Tyreek Hill reunite with Mahomes and the Chiefs, but it certainly feels like a natural fit, of course. I'll let you run on this last one. I know you're down there in Texas, close to the Cowboys. Based on what you've seen, and we've pointed out many times that it's still very early in the season, but they had the close loss to the Eagles, and then a very hard fought division win in overtime against the Giants. Do you look at the Cowboys through 2 games and see a playoff team?
I think Dak Prescott is playing at a playoff level right now. He's been one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL in the first 2 weeks. I think having two really good receivers, the first time he's had that since they had Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb together, really helps. Having a true number one running back and Javante Williams has really helped. I mean, he had almost 100 yards the other day against the Giants. All of that helps him, and I think he's looked the part. Their defense doesn't look anything like it's a playoff team, and I think it's gonna be about how many games the Cowboys can outscore their opponents.
Mhm.
The Giants, we all believe, are not a very good football team, and yet Russell Wilson passed for 450 yards,
Yeah.
and they had over 500 yards against the Cowboys. And yes, it went all the way through overtime. I get that. It was still way too many yards against a questionable quarterback and a questionable offense. And they just couldn't get pressure. They couldn't generate that pressure. And I don't know how much Jadeveon Clowney has left and how much he helps. I personally think he's one of the most overrated players in NFL history, a number one overall
Yeah.
pick who's made 3 Pro Bowls, who's never had a double-digit sack season, and is probably on its last legs in the NFL. How much does he have left? We're going to find that out. I think he's better than some of the pass rushers that they have on their team, but these positions by committee don't work. The Cowboys tried it with running back by committee last year, didn't work. They tried receiver by committee when they went out and traded for Amari Cooper. Didn't work, so they went out and got Amari Cooper. And now they're trying an edge rusher by committee after trading Micah Parsons. And I just don't think these position groups by committee work very often. And that's what they're trying to do. And I think they're going to find that they're not going to have very many sacks. They're not going to get very much pressure on the quarterback. They play a lot of good quarterbacks who are just going to be able to sit in the pocket, wait for the receivers to get open because your DBs can only cover for so long. If they have Duron Bland and they have, some other corners who are out, the rookie corner Ravel, when he gets back, I don't know how much he'll be able to help being a rookie,
Yeah.
having missed all of training camp and the offseason program. Maybe he helps. I think Diggs has looked terrible so far, but you've got to help them on the back end by getting to the quarterback, and they're not going to be able to do that, I don't think, consistently throughout the season. So the defense does not look that part. I didn't have them going to the playoffs. I don't think they go to the playoffs. Washington hasn't been quite what we thought they were going to be. So that might give them a better
Yeah.
chance to have a spot, because you're always looking at the other teams who have a chance to go to the postseason. That's who you're comparing yourself to, because you got to beat out those teams. So the Cowboys aren't just looking at Washington; they're looking at who's going to finish second and third in the NFC North, who's going to
Yeah.
finish second in the NFC South, who's going to finish second in the NFC West. Those are the teams you're comparing yourself against if you're looking to be a wild card team.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, I know all teams are looking to win the division. I get that. Realistically, the Cowboys aren't winning that division. They're not beating out the Eagles unless the Eagles have a string of injuries that includes Jalen Hurts. The Cowboys are not going to win the division. So to me, they're looking at that wild card, and you start looking at the teams they are comparing themselves against. I don't see them making the postseason, but I do think, and I said this before the season started, they were at 7.5 wins over under before the trade, the Micah Parsons trade. They fell to 6.5. I said even at 7.5, it was the easiest bet you could possibly make in Vegas to go put $1,000 down on the Cowboys to get over 7.5 wins. Over 6.5 wins was really easy because I think they get to at least 8. The question is, can they get to 9 or 10 or 11?
We'll find out. Still a long way to go in this young season. Sherine Williams, everyone, longtime reporter for NBC Pro Football Talk. We thank you so much, Sherine, for being so generous with your time and great insight as well. As always, thank you so much today.
Thanks for having me, Evan.